What's up, y'all? Today I wanted to walk you through how to make a Dariacore drop like Dashy, Sersha Dream, or Steege, who, fun fact, is a big fan of the channel. So I'm going to be breaking down this 32 bar section right here, and I'll just go ahead and play that so you know what you're getting into. And so we'll go ahead and start things off with the vocal. So the first thing that I did is I took Eric DOA and Breakince's track, Things You Do To Me, used vocalextractor.org to remove the vocals, right? And then just lined it up, pitched it up, actually. I think I set it to resample mode, tempo synced it with the track, and then used, just the sync to project tempo trick at the correct BPM for the track, and then sped it up to 206, right? That's all covered in the Dariacore Basics video, but I'll just reiterate it real quick. Then I lined it up to where the Breakince verse starts right at the point where the drop starts, and then I went in and just wrote the melody. And if I get rid of the counter melody, it's a little more clear. So I wrote the melodies behind it. Okay, so that was step one. Then the next thing that I did here, if you notice, there's this vocal up here that's kind of hidden. And so I took it and chopped it up to just follow the exact rhythm of the melodies that I had without the counter melody. So that didn't make it into the final cut of the track, but it did influence the process, so I figured it's worth showing, because what I ended up doing next, I wanted to stay true to the Dariacore mashup theme, so I got a different vocal, did, some finessing to get it in the correct tempo and pitch for this, and then put in Weezer's Sweater Song, where it's not synced up with the vocal, with the synth hits, but what does happen is it's every time, we have O in the rest, right? And then no starts the synth for the second part. So we go O, no on the first synth hit, right? Go, gone. That's a pop. And then of course, cricket comes in, and we'll talk about that later. And so just before, going too far into this video, I do want to say that I had to stretch this piece, and it sounds like shit by itself. But it's useful to know that, I went ahead and time stretched it early in the process because I knew, I wanted it to span the full length of this. And by doing that, I got my ears used to how that shitty, grainy almost vocal sounds, so that when I'm coming in later in the process, I don't have to, have this and then know that I want to stretch it later, because it's going to basically end up sounding like it doesn't work, when in reality, y'all heard it on the intro, you don't even notice it until I solo it out, right? So just a useful trick to know. If you're going to be doing any heavy time stretching, do it early in the process. Then lastly, I did want to keep the Breakince verse in this drop somehow. So what I did was, every time that there is a space in the sweater vocals, I used the Breakince verse as a backer for this rickety cricket fill here. Right, so it's just kind of giving a melodic texture to keep the song from sounding like it's completely bare right there, especially right here. That's a pop, that's a pop. I mean, it does sound cool without it, but that's a pop, that's a pop. I think it sounds cooler with it though, so. Then before we move on out of the vocals, I just want to show a little bit of the processing, because it's not, anything crazy. For the Breakince verse, all I did was put, and these are used in different sections, so don't pay attention to that. I put an OTT time at the default depth all the way up. So I boosted the mids a good amount, small boost to the highs, no boost to the lows. And then that EQ does nothing, I think, yeah. And then we have the sweater vocals, which I did do a lot to, and there's a reason for that, right? So the first thing that I did was put a pretty heavy EQ on them so that they would match the timbre of, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the tone. I wanted them to be as bright. Right, they sound kind of dead and not super exciting, but boosting the high end a good amount, and then some more with a high shelf, and a little cut to the low mids. Keeps them from being pesky and fighting too much with the synth that I have down below. So the processing on that, again, just an OTT with a lot of boosting and the time all the way up, and then a compressor just to kind of glue them back down. So the next thing I'll show is my sound design on this one. So I have a couple basic patches. The first one is going to be my sub wobble patch, or whatever you'd call that, saw patch. And as you can see, I just want to talk about the composition on this for a second. It's the same 5 notes just repeating over and over again in that dotted half note positioning, or whatever you would call that. And then we have the same thing with my top layer synth, except it plays a counter melody or a complementary note to it. So if I go into it here, and then here we just skip the first F, and as you can see, it goes, 4 notes down and back to the D. And then for the last section, it does resolve. So I'll start from here. Right, which helps this section come to a close. So let's go into the sound design for this. So for the bass patch, super simple, super easy. All it is LFO1 modulating a rate. I do have a macro on that rate, so that's going to be important later, but a trigger BPM sync on LFO with the kind of like half sign shape. And then I put that on the level for oscillator 1, which acts as our sub and our width. It's mostly width though, because we have the blend all the way up and detuning on, the standard position, 16 voices, randomness on, which is important. And then the second one acts as our bass. So all I did was go in here and say copy A to B with mods, and then just turn my unison down. Then we'll roll into the effects, where I just have a multiband compressor that I didn't even change anything on, except for pulled the threshold way up to -6 BPM, -6 dB. And then as you can see, there's no post effects on it. So when I made this patch, I just slapped it together and just kept moving with the process. And for me, that's what works the best. I don't want to get hung up on sound design. Like once I have an idea that's even passable, because I can come back and polish it later, right? Don't let anything stop your creative flow when you're flowing. So then moving on to my lead patch, it's very, very similar to the sub patch. And what we basically have here is 2 saws. The first one is pitched down 3 octaves. FM's from B at 50%. LFO1 with the rate modulation again on here, because we're going to use that later. Oscillator B, I have the level turned off, and then the randomness is turned off, which does help it to be a little more uniform with where it's FMing from. So then going into the effects that we have here, just some stuff that started this preset out. Low pass filter, just helping cut some of those highs. Then we have a hyper and dimension expander, bringing the size up, but only doing it when this envelope 1 is on, so that's being gated. Then we have some tape saturation, a little bit of mix, drive all the way up. An EQ boosting the highs, which, it's funny, I cut the highs here, boosted them back here, whatever. It is what it is. Then a multiband compressor where I just messed with the bands a little bit to get it super bright. So brought the mid up, brought the high up, left the lows where they started. And then as far as processing on this one, an OTT is going to be important. So an OTT boosted mids, not too much on the highs, but boosted the mids a good amount. And then that's it. That's really everything for the processing on this one, y'all. Shout out to the person who gave me this trick in the comments of one of the videos, because that has been super useful to if you ever can't press play with the spacebar in one of your synths, just hit this little thing and turn it off. So Shout out to that guy or girl. I don't know what your gender is, your they, whatever your thing is. So then before we move on to our counter melody, there is one more layer that goes along with this LFO neon patches, the new 2 neon patches I just showed, and it's this layer. So the way that I made that was I took this granular synthesis melodic session loop that I made in one other project, and then ran it through a stereo shaper to make it mono, a couple snap heaps, which I'm not going to show at all. Just go watch my snap heap glitch tutorial if you want to figure out how to make your own one of those, until it turned into this or something like it. And then I went in here and just cut little sections of it out until I had little pieces that I felt like complemented my synths down here. Right? So just a simple way to add like a little almost dubstep-y layer to it. Then my next piece is the counter melody, and it is that one patch that goes all over the place. So it sounds like this in context. Right? And I'm not going to play it too much because I don't want to make this video too long, but I'll just go ahead and solo it out and show. This is the simplest synth ever. I went in and pulled this sample, loaded it in here, went and changed the sampler center pitch to D, which is what this sample is. Put mono on and turned the slide on, right? And then just bent between the notes, and they kind of go in a counter melody to what the other lead is playing here. And then this is the important part, is this melody here changes for the second half, and it's what makes this 32 bars not get stale. I went in, and as you can see, like I took the first one and just added in new notes. Right? You seen how much overlap that is? Kind of scan across. You got to scan across with your eyes because I don't want to move around too much and mess this up. But I took this bass melody and then right, and just kind of made a little faster double time melody out of it. It's not really double time. Like I didn't go in and change the speed of it to half, but I just added more notes, which makes it feel a lot faster. So then lastly, before we move on to this second half over here, let's talk a little bit about like keeping tension in your drop. And so the way that I did this here, I'm just playing the things that change. So at the end of this 4 bars, I put the "that's a pop" and the break-ins vocal to back it. And then we start back on the 1. And if you look at the kicks for a second, you'll see that our kicks are pretty sparse here. That's a pop, that's a pop. Then what we did differently in this part is I do end with there being, you know, that last little section of these 4-bar sections is bare anyway, so I just fill it with that. But then here, I also skip the first note of the bass and the bass and the lead that's not the counter melody. And then here we get a lot more kicks, even though our snares don't change or our cymbals. So those are the elements that change there. And then moving to the end here, I actually keep the last 2 notes of that one. So those are the only notes in this little section here, you know, where we go here, here, you know, all the cricket vocals, where the cricket vocals happen. There's never any melodies going on except for right here. Oh, and there's also the end to the sweater vocal. Okay, so we finish it with the "and I die," right? Fits really well there. I was so proud of this when I made it. So then tension-wise, what I do here is when the "and I die" happens, I cut out all the bass elements. I have that fucking hips and nips sample, which is just chef's kiss, fucking hilarious. I died laughing when I put that shit in there. And then OG Mako Bitch You sample, just because that's one of my favorites of all time. But more importantly, cut all my bass out. So then when the "bitch you" happens, We have this little hat stutter, and then hats come in. Right, so we do have quite a more complex drum pattern going on here, as far as like there's hats that are special. There's, you know, like set to the set to complement our melodic stuff going on. Then after the bitch you sample, we have the break-ins vocal verse comes back in. Right, just gorgeous. Then when the bitch you happens, as you can see here, the hyperpoc we'll talk about first. It's this sound. I don't know why I named it hyperpoc, but I made this patch in a separate sound design session where I was just making sounds for like hyperpop when I started trying to do all that type of stuff. Recorded it, put it in here, changed the center pitch to E, which is what this is. That's what the original sound is. And then I put an envelope on it so that when I turn it on, as soon as and turn the sustain all the way up and then the release all the way down and no decay, what that does is gates it. So if I play like super low, when I let go of the note, it turns off. And that is important. And I also did that for my other lead, which I'm not going to go back and correct that, but the fake lead also did the same thing. So then I ran it through an OTT, which is just making it even brighter and shinier. A little bit less depth on this one and just a couple band adjustments there. And then as I said, my bass cuts out here. And then after the bitch you happens, it's like the almost like because the intensity of the track is going to come back up right here, right? Right, empty. And instead of having it go the synths being the like bring back the intensity of it, I like front run it with this. Right, and I just think that adds such a good bit of excitement. So we have drums get excited right here, and then melody gets excited right after that. It's just like tension on tension on tension. It's trying to push your listener or whoever, you know, push your excitement level when you're making the track. I don't know the way to explain it. It's kind of like that. And as you can see here, we have three elements going on again. So we have our our little neon sub layer goes in this pattern, and it just repeats over and over again. I'll go ahead and play the full one. Right, and I've used my automation knob that controls the rate here, right, that I showed earlier. I'll just show it again real quick. And it just speeds it up for this little section right here, which fits with the drums. You know, this is all that modulation there is to make this run kind of seamlessly with the kicks. Right, so this little stutter happens where there's a kick in the half bar. Or a quarter bar, whatever it is. So then since there's no lead layer, right, like this layer, that layer isn't in this section, and we replace it by having the hyperpoc along with the counter lead. Right, and so we're just kind of repeating that faster section from the first half of this drop. And then as you can see here, we have another little break where I just put in the classic ring mod perk. Oh, and then there is a change in the sub in this second half, so just a slight bit of variation here compared to, right, and it just changes the rhythm of it quite a bit, so. Yeah, and with that being said, y'all, I really think that's going to do it for this one. There's not much else I can say about this that comes to mind. Before I guess I say adios, see you in the next one, let me know in the comments if anybody would be interested, like if I made a sample pack, because I've noticed people buy my, people have bought my old sample pack on Gumroad, which is in the comments, but would people be interested if I was to put together a Dariacore drum kit / sample pack? Would that be something that y'all would want? And so with that being said, thank you for watching. I appreciate all the support and nice comments that I've gotten on the Dariacore tutorials, and I will see y'all in the next one.